All right? Let's look at emission next. And as a process, what is emission? So it's the movement of the semen into the prostatic urethra, and it is the secretion of all of our glands, seminal, vesical, and bulbar urethral glands, also into the urethra. Okay? And then ejaculation is the movement through the urethra. All right. So we're looking at, instead of the penis, we're looking at the structure of, let's see how much I can put over here. So we have the testes, the epididymis, vas deferens, and seminal vesicle. Ejaculatory duct, prostate gland, and bulbar urethral glands. So just in case you don't understand my clear drawings, all right, so we have glandular secretion and we have contraction of the smooth muscle of the vas deferens. And though there is some parasympathetic involvement, the primary characteristic one, the one I want you to choose, and emission is sympathetic. All right, so this is erection over here. And that is emission. Our same pathway of sensory on the spindle nerves is going to be involved. All right? I want to erase these words. May I do so? You guys can take pictures if you want to, or if you go ahead and finish drawing it. Because I need to write sympathetic words up there. Everybody okay with that? Okay? So now, since we're using sympathetic nervous system, we're going to be using this sympathetic chain ganglia right here. All right, so that comes from a little bit higher, the lumbar region of the spinal cord. So our sensory information that came into the sacral spinal cord is going to have to go up a little bit higher to reach the lumbar spinal cord. So we'll send it up. And then we have our preganglionic preganglionic sympathetic fibers will come out and travel down the sympathetic chain. But they will not synapse in each of those ganglia. Instead, they will leave and come into the inferior hypogastric plexus as well, so that same rat's nest. As such, these are identified as sacral splanchnic. So if we look on our image, there's the sympathetic chain. And coming off of the sympathetic chain, it's a little hard in here, it's easier on the female to see it, coming out of the sympathetic chain into the inferior hypogastric plexus. Right? So on the diagram, that's how you tell the difference between pelvic splanchnic and sacral splanchnic. If it's coming off of the sympathetic chain, it's sacral for sympathetic. If it's coming off of the ventral rami of the sacral plexus, it's parasympathetic and pelvic splanchnic. Okay, bless you. So this would be sacral splanchnic, sympathetic preganglionic, and then those postganglionic cell bodies. Oh dear, how am I going to get that all the way over there? Okay, this is an out-of-body experience. So the postganglionic neurons then leave the inferior hypogastric plexus to end up on the organs. And that's in this Netter's diagram here. So coming to the vas deferens, coming to the glands. So our neurotransmitter is norepinephrine, and that's going to result in the peristalsis of the vas deferens and the secretion of the glands. So that's emission. And that leaves us now with ejaculation, which is a combination of voluntary and visceral reflexes. It's another one that's both sympathetic and parasympathetic, but we're going to emphasize the parasympathetic. All right? Urination is a normal homeostatic event, and parasympathetic nervous system is involved with urination. So the urethra is innervated by parasympathetic fibers. There is an overlap with sympathetic, okay? But I'm emphasizing the parasympathetic component. So not only are these nerves going to the arterioles in the penis, but they are going to go to the smooth muscle of the urethra. So I will draw that in. Peristalsis of these muscles leads to the movement of the seminal, the semen, the prostatic fluid, the seminal vesical fluid, and the sperm as ejaculation. What other muscles that are skeletal muscles function in ejaculation? Exactly. Ischial-cavernosus and bulbospongiosus muscles. See if I can add that to this picture. So rhythmic contraction of these muscles adds to the movement of the ejaculate as well as to the pleasure of the orgasm experience. And so these are motor neurons that are going to be voluntary motor neurons that are going to be traveling with the pudendal nerve and providing motor, efferent. So sensory is always pudendal for our purposes. It's a little more complicated than that. But motor component is going to be both visceral and voluntary motor. So the visceral is parasympathetic to the urethral for peristalsis, and voluntary motor through via the lower motor neurons that are in the pudendal nerve for contraction of the bulbospongiosus and ischial cavernosus muscles and that rhythmic contraction. That occurs in both male and female. All right, the uterus also starts to contract in reverse in female orgasm. That looks really complicated up there. All those words and colors. Just a wee bit. So break it down, all right? I could only put it up there one letter at a time. No, I'm done. So when you go through and study this, remember to start everything with pudendal nerve, providing the sensory component. And then we have erection. Parasympathetic fibers via the pelvic splanchnics and cavernous nerves to the arterioles of the penis. Pudendal nerve, and then sympathetic fibers to the vas deferens and the glands for emission. And then for ejaculation, continued sensory through the pudendal nerve, and then motor to the urethral muscles and motor to the skeletal muscles for ejaculation. Pardon? No, because my internet thing went out when I was trying to. Well, I did this at the office yesterday. When I got home last night, the internet still wasn't working. That compresses the erectile tissue in a rhythmic fashion, and kind of also because the erectile tissue goes through into the penis, it also contributes to a propulsion of the sperm as well as to the sensory component of orgasm. The urethra by itself can melt the sperm through, and those muscles just contribute to that pressure. Okay, yes?
Is pudendal nerve also going to the ischial cavernosus?
That's the motor component of the pudendal nerve.
Okay.
Right. Because the pudendal nerve has both sensory and motor components. So if we move to this image, back to this image here, here's our ischial cavernosus muscle and the bulbospongiosus muscle. And these nerves right here, they're perineal nerves that I said you didn't have to know the name of. You follow them back, pudendal nerve. Okay? But that's the motor part, making those muscles contract.
So it all comes off the pudendal nerve.
Yeah. Sensory is pudendal, all right? And then motor to those skeletal muscles is pudendal. Motor to vas deferens is sacral splanchnic. Motor to the blood vessels is pelvic splanchnic components. So you kind of follow it through, and that also should be in the written material. Your head's hurt yet as badly as mine do?
Can you repeat that one more time, please?
Starting with what? May I erase the picture and I'll write it in words? You have this in your lecture notes as words, but let's see if you can follow the words and then follow the pictures on your own lecture notes. C stands for spinal cord. That's where our reflex center is taking place.
It's those pins.
Does that work? You guys follow that along with the images that we were drawing? So sensory is pudendal nerve, the spinal cord, motor coming back. Our first, the pelvic splanchnic nerves to the cavernous nerves, and the cavernous nerves then release the neurotransmitter at the penile arterioles. Okay? The emission is pudendal nerves to the spinal cord. Sensory is sacral splanchnic, which is confusing because it's really from the lumbar spinal cord, not the sacral spinal cord. We don't really name the postganglionic neurons. They usually travel with the blood vessels. I'm putting Calpers, it's just shorter. Not as many letters to write. So, emission is pudendal nerve to sacral splanchnic, which is at the lumbar spinal cord. The preganglionic neurons forming the sacral splanchnic come into the hypogastric plexus. Postganglionic neurons from the hypogastric, inferior hypogastric plexus then go to vas deferens and all the glands, and sperm and secretory fluids move into the urethra. And I'm just going to move this up a little bit higher so those in the back can read it better. plexus, and postganglionic parasympathetic to the smooth muscle of the urethra. That's the involuntary muscle activation. And then, let me write that in blue to be consistent here, sorry. And then the motor activation of the skeletal muscle. I think I have as much drawing the pictures. As much ink.